Well, after 3 days of global market meltdowns, today has seen a bit of a turnaround and a huge sigh of relief for investors. But that doesn't mean there's been no volatility. And there could be plenty more to come as China and the United States go toe-to-toe on tariffs. Scott Peterson is following all of these developments for us and joins me in studio now. So let's talk about the markets as we're seeing them today so far. How are things looking?
Yeah, things are looking like a big bounce back. And the markets are asking the question, like maybe after $10 trillion was lost from market capitalization, maybe it's time to buy. So let's take a look here together as far as what we're seeing on the opening markets. In the first few minutes in, we were seeing the markets up strongly, about 3.5% for the Dow Jones, and the same for the TSX, up about 400 points. There you can see that equates to about a $1,300 or a 13 point increase as far as 1,300 points. And so that's a significant jump. The TSX is seeing a similar move as well, 467 points to the upside. We've got oils, materials, things like that to the upside. So this gives you an indication that there's been a lot of money sitting on the sidelines here that has been sidelines and looking for a buying opportunity. Because after all, these companies are still, they're still making money. We are not seeing the tariffs officially imposed until tomorrow. So there's lots of anticipation for that as well. And also, because this comes down to one person, the U.S. president, we're seeing that Donald Trump has said this morning that he had a quote-unquote great call with South Korea, and also that China wants to make a deal. So all this is going into the broth of these markets, and there's no real direction to them. So we're not privy to what the conversations are about. So there's a lot of uncertainty. But we are seeing some more green in Europe as well, with London, Germany, and the Paris exchanges all up strongly, 3.5%. So clearly there's some enthusiasm around the world that maybe this selling has been overdone. But let's keep in mind that we are not seeing these tariffs being imposed until tomorrow. And there's also a lot of a pushback for economists as well, as far as trying to say that there's not a lot of clarity in these tariffs. And here's the chief economist for ING, in his own words, asking for a little bit of clarity.
It's obvious that financial markets today are taking a breather. They are trying to find a new balance, clearly waiting for April 9th and to see whether Donald Trump will really impose the announced tariffs or not.
And so there's a host of other people as well pushing in for change and for some sort of clarity, because after all, these tariffs, this is all in reaction to tariffs, the reciprocal tariffs that haven't even been imposed yet, and that due date is for tomorrow. Another look as well, we could take a look at the price of oil. It's about up another $1 a barrel this morning on some enthusiasm that the economy might get kickstarted from that. We're also seeing the Canadian dollar, the euro, the British pound, all positive against U.S. dollars.
Let me jump in for a second, Scott, because you've mentioned tomorrow a few times. So a lot of those major tariffs are going to go into effect tomorrow with various different countries. Also, tomorrow is the deadline for China to either back off or the U.S. to hit with 50% additional tariffs on Chinese imports. I mean, things look nice today, and it's good to see that green. I've never liked that color more than I like it today. But what are you anticipating for tomorrow?
Well, this is the thing. Unlike anything we've seen in the past, and I've been watching these markets for a lot longer than I'd like to admit, but unlike the 1987, unlike the financial crisis back in 2008, unlike the dot-com bust as well in 2001, that these markets are all being churned and burned, you could say, by one person, and that's the U.S. President Donald Trump. So what he might say tomorrow could flip everything on its end. So that's why these markets are so on such pins and needles. And there's also a fear index, and this is where a volatility type of index, that's at highs that we haven't seen since the beginning of the pandemic. So these markets just simply have no idea what's about to happen.
You mentioned there's also increased pushback on the president. What are you seeing?
We're seeing people like Bill Ackman, who's got heavy positions that he's taken losses in. He was the one calling for a 90-day sort of pause in these tariffs. We're also hearing from J.P. Morgan at Goldman Sachs that there could be a 60% chance of recession. We're also hearing from a variety of people, including Jamie Dimon at J.P. Morgan, saying that he doesn't see a lot of clarity here. And this is what the markets are really confused at. Is there an end game? If there is, what is that going to be? When are we going to achieve it? So these are all still big questions, and this could reverse itself at any time, depending on what might come out of the White House.
Okay, thanks so much, Scott.
Thanks, Natasha.
And as we've been discussing, Asian markets in the meantime are recovering somewhat from yesterday's steep losses. Now, this comes as the U.S. president is posting and boasting about great deals in the works with Asian allies. Now, just a short time ago, Donald Trump posted about a great call with South Korea's president. He says, "We talked about their tremendous and unsustainable surplus tariffs and shipbuilding," adding, "and payment for the big-time military protection we provide to South Korea." Trump goes on to write, "China also wants to make a deal badly, but they don't know how to get it started. We're waiting for their call." And in the meantime, Beijing is not blinking in the face of Trump's threats of an additional 50% tax on Chinese imports. China is now taking the dispute to the World Trade Organization, and it's vowing to, quote, "fight to the end." Now, this comes, of course, after one of the worst days in decades on the Asian Pacific markets. Journalist Laura Westbrook is in Hong Kong.
The Hang Seng Index rose 1.5% during trading Tuesday after Hong Kong led losses in the region on Monday, with the Hang Seng Index plummeting 13%, its steepest decline since the 1997 Asian financial crisis. Meanwhile, China's CSI 300 index climbed 1.7%, and Japan's Nikkei 225 index rose 6%, rebounding from an 18-month low on Monday. This comes after President Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba held a phone call in which the leaders agreed to open negotiations. Elsewhere, markets in Thailand, Taiwan and Indonesia fell. And we have seen some extraordinary moves over the past few days, with the trade wars igniting fears of a global economic slowdown. And there is still a lot of uncertainty, with some analysts saying it's too early to say that we've turned a corner. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump has threatened a new 50% tariff on China if it doesn't remove its retaliatory 34% tariffs. That would effectively double duties to more than 100% on goods shipped from China to the US. China's Ministry of Commerce has hit back, saying the US threat to escalate tariffs on China is a mistake on top of a mistake, which once again exposed the blackmailing nature of the United States. And if the US insists on its own way, China will fight to the end. Well, I've been speaking to some Hong Kongers on the streets today, and one man told me that while he is proud to see China standing up to Donald Trump, he also expressed his hope that both sides will come to the negotiating table. But for now, it appears neither side is backing down. Laura Westbrook for CBC News, Hong Kong.